It's time for this week's episode of Brandon's Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon's Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Syracuse University's Assistant Professor for Sports Analytics, Rodney Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Brandon. Thank you very much.
I'm doing it. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in teaching and sports education?
Well, I always was interested in sports, probably more than much of anything else that was in life. And I was not obviously good enough to be able to play at any high level. I did get to play at D3 basketball, which was a lot of fun, and always enjoyed, those type of things. But was always good in the math side and really enjoyed, those type of courses. So I kind of went in that direction and eventually found my way into economics as undergrad to be able to be paired with mathematics, and went on to grad school. And it kind of hit everything at the right time. I think that sports economics became a thing as really was going through there. And I was lucky enough that I was trained by some of the people that were, leaders in that area, being able to do some interesting work on sports, more to be able to apply it to the economic side, to be able to get data that you might not be able to get otherwise, which is beautiful about sports, right? We have so much data. But really kind of after I graduated and was working in the field, it became much more of a prominent thing. And I just was able to kind of ride that wave and always, enjoy watching games and following sports and trying to figure out what's going to happen. I mean, I've coached younger, people, junior high school, things like that. So I've always enjoyed that aspect, but, just kind of led to being able to be a college professor and being able to do that. Both my parents are teachers, one elementary level, the other high school level.
Of course, when did you know that you wanted to work in sports education?
It kind of works probably the opposite way, I guess. It was that I was working and in terms of the like business school type environment, being able to teach economics and offered sports economics as an elective. And it was more, again, to be able to get students excited and interested in the course, because I do a lot of sports examples in any of the courses that I taught because of, like I mentioned before, the data is so available and there's a lot of fun things to talk about. But really did that as a way to be able to show people how you can get into the industry, but mostly be able to better learn the topic by doing some interesting things with the information. And eventually, kind of became a sports economist when that became a thing. And eventually, Syracuse was looking for that type of position. I wound up moving there and then being able to work as part of their sport management department as opposed to the business school where I was in before, and eventually led to this sport analytics program. So it wasn't something I knew was going to happen or ever really envisioned. It's something that just kind of organically rose out of a bunch of different events that occurred over my lifetime.
Of course, what was your experience like going to Clemson University to get your doctorate degree?
Clemson was wonderful. I mean, I really enjoyed my time down there. As mentioned earlier, I grew up, I went to undergrad in a small school in Pennsylvania called Lebanon Valley College. So I had the small school experience and was looking to be able to do something that I didn't know exactly what to do with the math and the econ background. Eventually found the application for Clemson, thought it sounded interesting. We were in a recession at that particular time as I go back in time. So was deciding that might be the best thing to do to go for a year, get a master's. And I just wound up loving it. And a lot of that had to do with just all the great professors that were there and also the interest in sports and the interest to be able to talk about that. I mean, it was nothing at that time. I was there in the early 90s, mid 90s, and they weren't as good, football wise as they have been in recent years. But it's still a sports obsessed type culture. And a lot of the people that I trained under had big interest in sports and were also doing some research in sports and kind of saw what was available to be able to do along those lines.
For studying mathematics, how did that help you into the sports economy?
Yeah, no, it's a matter of that the math eventually led me to the economics. So I was not familiar with economics coming out of high school. Really did not really, think about anything about it. I always knew I was interested in like financial type things, etc. And after taking some econ classes, really enjoyed it. And then I found that, I could use the math to be able to do that for economic issues and economic problems. And it kind of became an outlet for that. And as I mentioned a couple of times already, sports is so prevalent with data that found a way to be able to do some interesting research, at least I hope, that based upon those types of data sets that are out there. And it was really enjoyable and a very fun thing to be able to do, but probably would not have ever gotten into this if I had not started in math.
Of course, coming to Syracuse, what has that been like, obviously getting to teach sports economics?
Yeah, in terms of the economic side was kind of where I started with this. It's always a lot of fun. You do some interesting things that you can't do in other, courses that would be pure econ, like competitive balance or uncertainty of outcome, those things that, businesses might not care about. We care a lot about in sports. And then you think about all the interesting things with salaries and the salary cap and all the different things about, the way of play and competitiveness and things like that. You have a lot of interesting things that you can look at. And that eventually led to what we have now in terms of the analytics program of being able to take that basic idea and then expand it out on a variety of different fronts to be able to do something which I think is pretty unique right now in the marketplace.
Of course, what is that like getting to see those students learn about sports finance and sports economics?
Yeah, in terms of like early on in teaching those courses, I had some students be able to go into sports. Some I didn't even realize I heard from later that were able to get into that, but that was never really the aim when I was at the other universities. But now with the sport analytics program, we're placing people directly with teams. So we have players with teams across all the major leagues being able to do a variety of analytics, whether it's on the on-field player side or whether it's on the business side. We have a good mix there. Plus things like the legalization of the sports gambling, daily fantasy has led to a lot of job placement in that area. So we have a lot of students that go into those areas, and it's just great to see. I mean, that's kind of what they really dream about, right? So you can actually be able to get somebody from the point where they're interested to being able to see when they're out there working for the team, and it's really an amazing feeling and something that I'm so proud of them. It's just really, really terrific to be able to see.
Of course, for those students that are looking to study sports analytics, what are some of the classes that they are taking?
We basically work on a front where I kind of stole from baseball's five-tool player and created our own five-tool player. So the first tool is mathematics. So you have to take high-level math as they offer at Syracuse. So you're taking things linear algebra, advanced calc, advanced prob and stat, etc. Then we do a lot of coding. We do extensive coding in both R and Python because teams and leagues in different places kind of use both of those in terms of their analysis. We have a deep dive into business. Now, again, I'm biased toward economics because that's my background, but we make two students take a bunch of econ classes, including game theory, because game theory is so important for sports. Then in addition to that, we have communications that we work on because it's one thing to be able to do the analysis, it's another to be able to explain it to a coach or a physical therapist or a GM or whoever it is that you're talking to. So we work on that in terms of both written and oral forms. And then the last part is just adding another skill to be able to try to broaden this in the international international environment, we make everyone take a foreign language. And this is something that, again, it's a really competitive marketplace because there's very few of these jobs for many teams. And sometimes being able to have that little added edge has been an advantage to some of our students. So it's a thing you wouldn't naturally think of as being part of our process, but is what we do there. And, mainly the courses cover the mathematics, the machine learning, the linear regression, econometrics, being able to get to do things with the data, including visualization and all those modeling techniques.
Of course, for those students taking classes such as the game theory, what are some of the things that they are learning in game theory to help them into the sports world?
Yeah, in terms of the game theory, what we do, some of those things in terms of sports. So you think about anything from a process where there's like a competitive nature between a couple of entities, or multiple entities. So what happens in terms of one school, going back in time before NIL, one school cheats in terms of recruiting. How do other schools react, to those type of things? In terms of pitcher hitter matchups, what type of pitch versus, what's the dominant strategy of a batter, or what's basically they're more apt to be able to do. That type of thing can be done in any type of sport. So it can be done at a player level, it can be done at a team level, it can be done in terms of negotiations with salary. There's lots of things that come into play where what happens is that instead of looking at a static type world where we just say, here's the answer, assuming all these other things stay the same, in game theory, we say there's active participants. So you need to be able to figure out not just what you're doing, but what the other group's going to do to be able to come up with an answer. So we do that in an econ setting, but we also apply it in other classes that we have in the analytics major.
Of course, in sports ecoms, what has it been like, obviously, teaching them about sports ecom before the NIL versus now with the NIL?
Yeah, the NIL is really interesting. We actually have a course in NIL at Syracuse as well. It's in our sport management program that many of our students teach. Dave Maloney teaches that course, and it's really, really interesting as to how all this has evolved. I had a student be able to do an excellent research project on NIL in baseball and how that basically is influenced because a lot of these foreign players cannot participate in NIL. So how that impacts everything that people are talking about with the pay for minor league players versus how much money you can make at school under NIL. There's really interesting applications that are there. So we borrow some of those techniques, but we let Dave be able to teach that course in general. But many of our students apply it. We had a really nice senior thesis done as an overview of the industry and how schools have reacted, kind of a game theory type approach as well in this past semester. So students are definitely utilizing it, and we're kind of, I think, on the cutting edge of that too at the university.
What are some of the differences between students that are taking sports ecoms versus sports finance?
In terms of the differences there, I mean, I see both, I guess, in terms of students that we have in the sport analytics program. If I go back in time, it would just be people that were looking for an elective that they thought would be interesting and fun, right? So really wanted to be able to provide that. Now it's kind of more, can they be able to utilize this depending upon where they want to be? So not only our sport analytics majors take the sport econ class, but the sport management majors do as well. So we kind of have a broad range of where those type of things can be applied to be able to think about, how prices change, think about, how quantities might change over time. Just the intersection of supply and demand explains so much, and understanding the, elasticity of demand, et cetera. Things like dynamic pricing and how's that change the world of sports. Those are all topics that we discuss to be able to try to get the students thinking about things that eventually they'll probably be dealing with in the real world.
Of course, what career options are out there for sports analytics that are studying sports analytics and then after collegiately going into the sports world?
Yeah, no, I mean, when I first designed the program, I was really concerned about how few jobs I thought there were with the teams, right? And that was probably going to be the student's dream, Moneyball and everything, right? So you read Moneyball, you watch Moneyball, this is what you want to be able to do. You want to be working for the team or working for a league. And I didn't know if there was going to be enough spots to be able to justify this as a major. And I really care about that in terms of, I want the students to be able to be successful. So I paired the on-field analytics, the, analysis analysis of the player and the team with the business analytics, being able to look at what happens on the business side for sports. So we kind of take an equal path with both that are out there. So that's why we've had a lot of success with students going directly to teams, more than I ever would have thought, both on either the player analysis side or the business analysis side. The world of daily fantasy and gambling is heavily invested in data analytics. So therefore, our students have been a natural fit for those things. And then you get some things that I would not have expected. Video game companies, right? Video game companies need to produce the ratings for their players, etc. So as students there, and just, tech startups that are being able to work in sports, etc. So there's a lot of different areas that can go there. But we've also had students that we're not a very old program, right? We just graduated our third full class of students a few weeks ago. But we've had some students that started in sports and then jumped to other data science jobs just because they were a lot more lucrative, right? That basically that they maybe didn't, saw the difference that they could double or triple their income by moving from a team or a sports organization to a, big company that's not necessarily doing sports. So we have some students be able to do that as well. And we really think the skills are transferable because the program's based on skills. Sports is just is the vehicle by which we teach it. But the skills are really what's at the heart of everything.
Of course, for those people that are looking to go into jobs like player analytics, what are some of the things that they would be needing to take?
From my perspective, when I put together the program, I looked at all the job openings and came up with a list of what I thought would be important. And that's where that came into play. Mainly what you need to be able to do is have a good logical sense of reasoning, right? Which is sometimes difficult to be able to teach, but that's kind of repetition and being able to be around others and discuss these things. A good handle on math, obviously prob and stats important, but I think when you get into higher level modeling, things like calculus and linear algebra are also very important. And then the coding is something also that really separates. And a lot of times that's what maybe gives our students the most difficulty. I would have thought originally that, the math might have been the deterrent, right? Being able to be like, okay, I don't really want to take Calc 3. But it's been more of the students that like, okay, coding is not necessarily natural and having to get to that point. It's truly learning another language, and we require both R and Python. So they're kind of learning 2 additional languages to be able to do that. So we think those are probably the most important skills. And then it depends on what you go into, of whether the business side is what makes sense, or other things like understanding, such as rehabilitation and time of injuries and things like that. We try to cover a lot of those different things as much as we can, but when it gets back to it, mainly it's the math, it's the coding that really kind of drives everything.
Of course, with sports gambling being so popular that it is now from back when it was, what are some of the things that people are studying in sports to know about sports gambling?
Yeah, no, thankfully, this is one of the areas that I worked in terms of researching for much of my career. One of the first things I got into was looking at market efficiency, kind of a finance application, being able to study sports because the data was there, right? We could go ahead and get the data on sports betting because people keep track of it and able to get long data sets. So mainly was studying things like market efficiency. The idea is that, are these things priced correctly? Is there any bias, etc.? What's the role of streaks, the hot hand, things like that. So I've done a lot of that for a variety of different sports, and some of our students have done that as well. We do require a senior thesis that occurs over 2 semesters, so they get a deep dive in terms of a really big project. And some of our students have applied that to being able to look at biases in the marketplace, the impact of a variety of things like streaks, as I mentioned before, and also daily fantasy data is now pretty prevalent. So people have looked at similar type things there. What's the role of streaky performance in terms of this? What's the role of rest, right? How often should you rest your catcher in Major League Baseball, right? Is this something that's optimally being done by teams? And can we learn anything from the fantasy market to be able to tell us something about that? So students have done all those type of things, and it's really fun data to work with. And it's probably for them not a lot of work. It's more enjoyable.
Of course, as a professor, what is it like getting to see those freshmen come into the program and then going into the senior year, going out of the program and succeeding and going into the sports world?
It's incredible. I mean, our best resource is our students. I mean, it's a matter of that. It's incredible. The level of talent that we're attracting is just tremendous in terms of just raw ability, in terms of their, test scores, their high school performance, standardized tests, etc. So we've been very blessed to be able to just bring in and just very, very talented group, and they help each other so much. I mean, I enjoy right from the start being able to get to kind of fire them up and get to be able to be able to install, here's our way of wanting to be able to do this and being able to make this work. And then to be able to see their progression is a lot of fun. We have a very active club like organization. So we have a baseball analytics, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, sports book, etc., where the students take on group research projects and do things that would be competing in competitions, etc. So you start to see how they progress through there, not just in the classroom. And then I do get to see all of them as a senior year in terms of the thesis. So get to really learn what they're most interested in and what their goals are. And obviously when they land those jobs that are out there, it's just, so happy for them. I mean, it can't possibly be as happy as they are, I don't think, but I hope it's close. I mean, it's really just amazing to be able to see that. And, we had students that like literally said, okay, I want to work for the New York Yankees. And it's like, okay, yeah, really, it's a matter of the odds of that's really, really low, but it happened, that actually have seen that from day one saying, this is what you want to do, to being able to do that. And that's just has blown my mind. Actually, it's kind of been something I would never have envisioned, but very, very proud of all our students and all the hard work they put in.
Of course, how is that like to have alma maters of the program going on to big sports teams such as the New York Yankees?
Yeah, no, it's incredible to be able to see that with the different teams. I mean, it's so nice for our recruiting too, right? I mean, I don't know if you think of too much of regular college type atmosphere for non-sports as recruiting, but we effectively try to recruit. I mean, part of my job, I think, is to recruit the talent that's out there to be able to bring them in for the people that are most interested. And we had one toward the end of this past semester when students are making up their minds, and literally one of our students that's with the Milwaukee Bucks was able to zoom in at halftime, from his work at the game and be able to talk about what he's doing. And he was incredible in being able to do something like that. And, others call in, be able to share what they're doing from work or share as part of the experiences when we're, being able to talk to the incoming first year students, or if we're talking to prospective students, them being able to share their stories is just, absolutely incredible. So, I love being able to see that. I love that that's possible. I didn't, again, think that necessarily would be as prevalent as it was, but we want to maximize that as much as we possibly can. But so many of the current students now can learn from the previous students because they see what they went through. They see how much hard work they put in. They saw what the interview process was like. They saw the importance of being professional and responding on time and things like that too, that you don't always think about from a instructor, teacher type perspective. That's so important to what they do. So yeah, really, really thankful to our students. As I mentioned, they're our best asset that we have.
Of course, for my listeners that don't know, what is sports analytics and what do you study in that field?
Yeah, it's a matter of, I think it means many things to many people, right? It's a matter of that this is something that I struggled with when I was kind of tasked to be able to build this, that, what is it exactly? Because people throw around a lot of different things. And, to me, I had always thought about it from the economics perspective because that's my background. But when I started to research it, it really fell into those 5 tools type idea. It was that really the notion of the math, the coding, those things are really what's important. So being able to do database work, being able to, do things with the data to be able to clean it and be able to work things with it and then be able to do the analysis, whether it's visualization or modeling, and then the communication aspect too. I mean, we heavily do that by being able to have lots of presentations and encourage them to submit to research conferences to be able to get experience, etc. It's just that it's one thing to be around maybe people at MIT Sloan Sport Analytics Conference and have a conversation. It's another, though, to be able to talk to someone that might be in the front office that has no background with these type of things. So, we see that in Moneyball, right? It's kind of like this, chasm that you can't get across between the 2 groups. Hopefully that's being blended more together in today's world, but there's still going to be people that aren't going to go ahead and be like, oh, well, that machine learning technique makes sense to me. How do you explain it to that person versus how do you explain it to somebody that really is, extremely technical and might be challenging your work. So, those are things that we really work on in the classes and outside of the classroom as well.
Of course, what are some of your future plans for the sports analytics program at Syracuse?
Yeah, well, we're now being able to start a master's program, and the master's program would be able to do a variety of things that are similar, to the undergrad program in terms of the coding and the math and the different things that we can do with modeling and machine learning, et cetera. But kind of what we're turning our attention to there is an intersection of the collective bargaining agreement and the world of sport analytics. So we want to be able to do things across individual sports. So have a course on basketball, but not just in terms of selected things that people have researched on basketball, but try to make it into something where while you're doing it, you also learn about the CBA. So what are all these contract exemptions and different things that exist in the NBA, and how can we apply that to performance versus salary and the limits on that? And what does that mean? Those type of things, because I think that more and more people within the organization need to know the CBA to be able to be effective. And that might be some area where we don't see that overlap, right, with the analytics. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to offer something pretty unique in that field. And then in addition to that, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, more courses that directly address the things on daily fantasy and those type of things on the gambling side, more type of things that relate to performance and injuries and sports science and things that we don't necessarily have in our program right now that we think we can be able to overlap to. I mean, we work with our athletics department in a variety of different capacities, and that has opened us up to more of the things that relate to the sports science. So being able to have that, I think, is going to be something that we really want to pursue in the future. But kind of keep doing what we're doing, make it even better if we can, and then add elements of where we think the industry is going.
Of course, what advice would you give those prospective students that are looking to go into sports analytics to study it?
Sure. I think that, the main thing to do is just do as well as you can with everything that's out there, right? The more math that you take, the more that you challenge yourself. If you want to take a computer course and things like that, those things are all going to be able to help you later on, whether you're in sports or whether you're not, right? Those are skills that are scarce that society needs, and going to be something that will have you in demand. From the sports specific point of view, it's whether you're playing or not, right? If you're playing, you can think about analyzing yourself, analyzing your team. But even if not, you can volunteer. Help out by being able to do something with your local little league team or your local high school or junior high school team, by being able to keep the stats and be able to do some kind of visualizations, do stats and be able to try to look at relationships or projections that you have out there. There's plus, if you didn't want to do that individually there, you can also be able to download tons of data that's freely out at Fangraphs for something baseball related before our conversation today. You can be able to hop on there and just download the data, right? There's all these sport reference sites, whether we're talking about baseball reference or pro football reference, etc. It's pretty easy to take that data and get it into Excel and be able to do some things with it. So those type of things that if you're really interested and you haven't done that, probably being able to familiarize yourself a little bit with Excel and then getting some data that's online, you can have a whole lot of fun, right? To be able to start to create some charts and graphs of your own, of your favorite player, your favorite team, or why you don't think some team is as good as everybody says they are, and you can be able to put those things out there on social media or be able to create your own website. It's a whole different world than I ever envisioned when I first started being able to kind of deep dive into these data sets.
Of course, what advice would you give those prospective students that are looking to go into sports economics and after their collegiate career of studying?
Yeah, I think any of these type of jobs is a matter of that being able to get as wide of a range of skills in that area as you possibly can is important. Again, I think like the math skills, the computer skills, those things are transferable and valuable to whatever you might be doing. But in addition to that, just being able to get different points of view, being able to read different things that are out there, right? Being able to read some things online. There's great blogs that you can follow. There's books that are out there to be able to do. The more that you read, the more that you investigate it, the more different points of view that you will get. I mean, one thing, it's one thing for me to go ahead and be able to teach a student something in class, but it's another for them to be able to then, read something that's coming from a different point of view and then compare and contrast it. Or discuss with other classmates and think about, what their perspective is now that, I'm 50 some years old and they're in their teens, well, how is what I'm talking about different in the world of sports today that I might not know about it, right? So I think the more that you read, the more that you talk about it is going to be able to serve you well in the long run, in addition to, trying to get those skills that every, industry is trying to value.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to work in sports education and teach in sports education?
I think there's more opportunities now than there ever would have been. I mean, it's not something that I knew about from the econ side. Like I mentioned earlier, it just kind of evolved over time. But there are many, many sport management programs that are out there that do a wide range of different things. There's obviously the management, but there's, sales and sponsorship and sports law, et cetera, that there's many ways to be able to go into that. If you are, getting a PhD in those areas and that's something you're interested in teaching, there's now more opportunities, I think, than there ever was for those. And my guess gets to be too, is there's going to be more and more of the analytics program. I mean, we've had success, so I would expect that to be copied. And I'm guessing that those things will go ahead and be able to be out there as well. And if you're not at the college level, if you're at the high school level, it's a fun thing to be able to add to your courses. It's a fun thing to be able to offer courses to the students, because if you enjoy it and love talking about sports, you'll find that so many of your students do as well. And it's really something that you can get them involved, whether it's with the, the high school team itself or wherever, they might be doing with it. You can be able to make it real. Somebody might be able to apply it to their own abilities and be able to say, oh, here's why I'm, changing, I'm more tired, I can see on this because I didn't have as much rest or whatever, and therefore my performance slipped, so I should get more sleep, or whatever it goes ahead and gets to be. They can start to do their own type of data analysis, and all of those type of things are able to help. The more that you immerse yourself in what you want to be able to do, this, right? It's a matter of the more you do it, the better you're going to be able to get to be. And so I think to anybody, find what you love and just spend the time doing it, right? And the things tend to work out when you apply yourself and be able to put yourself out there and be able to just follow those dreams.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find your contact information at?
The easiest place I would say would be our website, but we talked about earlier, that's a little bit tricky sometimes to be able to find that. My email is just rpaul01@syr.edu. That's probably the easiest place to be able to go. If you do a search for Sport Analytics Syracuse University, hopefully you'll be able to find that. But again, that email is just like my name. It's rpaul01@syr.edu.
Thank you again, Rodney Paul, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the Syracuse Assistant Professor for Sports Analytics.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Brandon. Really appreciate you reaching out. Appreciate all you do.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Rodney Paul, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.